Hello, my name's Josh, and over the years I have repoed many storage sheds. So today I thought I'd share something that I think a lot of people wouldn't think is actually an issue, and that is people are selling these sheds under a rent-to-own contract. So they can't say they buy them, but technically that's what they're doing. If they go and they buy one of these buildings and they do a rent-to-own, but while they're in that contract, they're not paid off, they try to sell the building, or they do sell it. And you don't want to be the buyer of that shed if it's not paid off. So rent to own is really just how it sounds. It's rent to own. They rent it until they own it. They don't own it until it's paid in full. They don't have a right to sell it or really to do much with it. So you don't want to be the person who ends up buying those. I think one of the top places where this happens is Facebook Marketplace. There's a lot of them on there for sale. I'm sure there's other places online or just friends of friends trying to sell them. Some of these are people that are just plain crooks and they're just trying to make some money, so they go to get them. They never put a payment on it and they just sell it, and they're just crooks. I've dealt with them myself. Others are people who think that, well, they will go and they're in a financial pinch, and so they need money, so they think, well, I'll just sell the building and then I'll pay it off, and then I got a little bit of money left over. So both of those are a no. So as you, the buyer, that's where I want to give some ideas on what to look for and how to avoid it. So number one would be is, how old is the building? First of all, if it's an old building that looks like it's been 5-6 years old or 10 years old, it's most likely not under rent-own contract. The newer ones, typical rent-to-own is no more than 4 years. I've also heard of the sheds that end up going missing, where people either sell them or move them and stuff. Almost always happens in the first year. So they look fairly new. If they look fairly new, that's sort of what you're looking for, that they might be rent-to-own. And then, of course, the question is, how do you find out? So you can just ask, hey, is this paid off, or is it under rent-to-own contract? And if they say, no, it's not, then you could ask for proof, and they should have a receipt. If they can't provide that, then, or, they might say they don't have it anymore, then they should be able to tell you where they bought it at, and you can contact either the builder or the salesperson that sold it and just find out from them if this was, because they will know if it was paid in full or if it's rent to own. The other way is more complicated, would be is to, if they don't want to cooperate with you, to try to figure out who the builder is on your own, with maybe take the picture of the building and figure out who builds that style building, because they are all different. Like every builder has a little different trim maybe, or the roof, or something that's a little bit different, or sometimes they're just different shaped roof. So if you could figure out who the builder is that way and contact them, if you have the person's address or name, especially their name when they're selling it. But that's a little more complicated. The other thing would be is if they tell you, oh yes, it's on rent-to-own contract, but we're going to sell it and then pay the rent-to-own company. Then you can just buy it, right? No, I would not do that. How do you know they're going to do it? Even if it's somebody I just wouldn't do it. I had a guy, I showed up and the guy's like, yeah, I sold it, and I was going to pay the company back, and I still will. Yeah, my brother runs a lot where he sells them, he deals with this company, and I thought, yeah, I wouldn't want to be his brother. So that's you just don't do that. So if that's the case, then you say, okay, I still want to buy it. Give me the rent-to-own company's contact, because these are not banks. People think they're banks, but they're not. These are private companies that finance these sheds and then rent them out to individuals. So you could ask for their contact, and then you can call that rent-to-own company and say, hey, here's a building that this person is trying to sell to me. Is that okay with you? Can I pay, and then that's up to you if you want to do rent-to-own with them, or if you want to just pay them cash. But you make arrangement with the rent-to-own company and get your own person to deliver the building, to move it for you, and then you can control all that. That way it's paid off. You do not trust them to you just pay them, the seller, and then expect them to pay the rent-to-own company, because if they don't, you're still in trouble, because essentially you are in possession of stolen property. Because if you rent something and you sell that, that becomes stolen property, and it's not a situation that anybody wants to be in. So just be aware of it. The other thing I was going to say is, when you're sure it's not rent to own and everything sounds good to go, I still would never send money to the seller, at least not in full. If you're comfortable with $100, you can do it. One of my coworkers showed up one time to pick up a building to move for somebody. He got there was no building there. After talking to the people, he figured out that they sold the thing twice, or who knows how many times. So they got at least 2 different people to send them money for that building, and unfortunately the other people, or somebody else, driver, came first and took it. And I mean, if I want to be really dirty, I can just go out and take a picture of somebody's building and put it on Facebook Marketplace and get people to pay me a down payment on it. And I mean, it's just stuff like that. This goes into all of the scams that go on in this world. It doesn't matter if it's storage building, whatever it is. We've got to be aware and just be very careful. So when I moved one for somebody one time, the seller and the buyer met halfway and they exchanged cash. Nowadays you have things like Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. I mean, the cryptocurrency, you got really fast payments. So what I would do is I would see if I could arrange paying through one of those apps, and then I would be in contact with the driver, and once the driver's there and can confirm to me that the building is there, it's in good condition like it was advertised. If you don't go look at it yourself, I would recommend that anyways. And then once the driver can confirm that yes, they can get it loaded, everything's good to go, now you can pay the seller. But you just don't want to do that ahead of time, because you don't know. They might screw you over and you're out the money. So with that being said, just be careful. I guess one more thing is, I know people are going to ask, how do you get them moved? How do you find a mover? How do you find somebody to move a shed? There's a website called ShedHappensLocator.com. That's a long name. ShedHappensLocator.com. And you can put your zip code in, find a local hauler or somewhere in that area. And the other one is, well, it's not a website, but just find a local dealer where they either built the buildings or where they sell them, and just either call or stop in and ask them, hey, who hauls your buildings? Do you have a hauler that I could get his phone number and contact them? So that's two ways you can get a hold of somebody to haul them. And I think that pretty much sums it up. So just be careful. Make sure they're not rent to own before you buy that shed from somebody else. Bye now.